I'm Kelsey.
I'm Cassie.
And I'm Nolan from SCP Weekly. We bring you news from on-site and off-site.
And we share your love for the creative community that surrounds the SCP Wiki.
Join us on Tuesdays for new episodes, wherever you listen to podcasts, or on YouTube at SCP Weekly.
Hey there, SCP fans. My name is Grigori Karpin, and this is Simply Creative People, the show about SCP creatives, be they authors, artists, or off-site content creators like YouTube and TikTok. We're focused on bridging the gap between various fans and serving as an introduction to different concepts and stories on the wiki. So, many welcomes to all, and let's get started.
Welcome back to Simply Creative People with no delay because we just released an episode. My name is Grigori Karpin, author on the wiki, joined
author trapped within the walls of the wiki.
Sometimes it really feels like that, yes. And then joined, as always, who was just speaking.
I am the very first HarryBlank.
And our welcoming back this is the third time you've been on, right, Peg?
Maybe fourth.
Just can't get rid of this guy.
Oh yeah, you're right, because there was the comedy one, and then we did one that was about KCON winners, or not winners, but ones we liked from KCONs. And then
some underrated ones.
That's right. And then, or the other ones from 7K, maybe that was the one we did. Anyway.
Oh, yeah, it was 7K.
Many episodes.
Our guest is plaguepjp. Hello, welcome back.
Going on, everybody.
So today, because when we were talking about 001s the first time with Plague,
001s,
we it became pretty clear that there was no way we were going to cover all of the ones that we wanted to cover, especially the ones we really wanted to dig in for because they were really long. So we thought, when we were talking about this behind the scenes, that we would just each pick one and go in deep. Just a warning ahead of time. Usually we try to avoid spoiling the articles, especially if there's twists. We're not going to do that this time. We're going to go kind of on a deep dive. These are all pretty famous articles. Not that we don't want you to go and read it if you haven't, but we're going to talk about them pretty in depth. So that's your warning. But for anybody that maybe doesn't know, who maybe missed the first episode or hasn't looked at 001s, we have a lot of listeners who are not regular readers. I wanted to try and explain what an 001 is. So we'll each kind of give our little spiel. But in general, the 001 is the first slot on the first series of the SCP Wiki, of the main list. But instead of there being only one article, like there typically is, you click on it and you get a medic kill agent image, and it's told that you're not allowed to be looking at this, and you have to scroll down a ridiculous amount of page to find out that there are multiple 001 proposals, and they're typically named, they're named whatever somebody wants to name them, but typically they're named on the basis of the author or the author's avatar or whatever.
Yeah, specifically, they're all named code name, author name, actual title. So, for example, I believe it's something like code name, plaguepjp, the ones that got away, something like that.
Me and Rounder House, I guess, broke that rule.
Yeah, because you're fucking so special.
Yeah. Well, he listed his as Rounder House's proposal. I was like, oh, okay, I like that. So then I did that. And then Davey Fool did it, and one more person has done it.
Yeah. So it's usually either author name or author avatar name. It's fairly open at this point.
And to be honest, because so many people have only done one, although Harry, you've done a few, and I guess the other one isn't.
Well, sort of.
Isn't an 001. That's right.
I've done one, and I've done one that kind of is.
But Rounder's done 3 so far, and we'll do a 4th soon. And DJ Cactus very famously has done a bunch of them. Tahoni has done a few of them.
5 at this point.
Yeah.
So Ip's got a bunch.
A lot of times, it does have a few.
3.
A lot of times, we reference these articles by the name of their author. Like the first one we were talking about today is Tufto's proposal. There's more to it than that, but a lot of times that's as simple as you can. Now, the minute you get into the people that have done more than one, obviously that doesn't get as simple. But very often we just refer to it as the author. And for a long time, the 001 was sort of considered to be sort of the pinnacle of your SCP career. Specifically, this is that thing that you're going to make that's going to either make waves or is going to be one of the things you're remembered for. Not all authors do it. I have not technically done one, although I did.
It's only technically now.
Yeah, I did sort of join one in the fact that we did a joke one, which has done very well for a joke article.
Abracadavid's proposal, it's very funny.
A peek behind the curtain. Peek is spelled P-E-A-K.
Yeah, just to make everybody angry.
I guess
Or
I've
more
seen-
specifically, me.
I've seen so many comments. They're like, isn't it supposed to be peek? P-E-E-K? No.
Fucking horrible.
Because
War crimes.
you've corrected my shit a few times. I misspell that all the time, and I was one of the people that proposed that title, and I misspelled it, and then they were like, "Oh yeah, we should keep the misspelling." And I was like, "Oh right, yeah, that's funny."
Oh, that's great. That's great. That's wonderful. Good contribution.
I also did the smoke bomb bit.
Right, the ending. Yeah.
But anyway, so today we're going to be breaking in deep to 001. So what are those? So like I said, they're often considered to be kind of the pinnacle, but in universe, the idea is that no one can really know what the real 001 is. So all these other proposals, which one is real, which one isn't, that's sort of the meta explanation for why there's so many. In reality, it's just, they didn't want to leave it for just one author when this practice first got started. And it became a thing where it was open to anyone. But
yeah, the phrasing on the page is particularly entertaining. It's one of the better bits of phrasing from an early page, and it says that something like multiple and or no fake proposals have been appended to this list. Some of them and possibly none of these are false.
Yeah. And oftentimes, though not every single time, these are articles that have something to do with the Foundation or the nature of anomalies in general, or some very grandiose aspect of the history of this world. One of the ones we'll talk about today very clearly breaks that pattern. And a bunch of the other ones do too, actually. One of my favorites, which is a record by Kate McTierris, does not do that either. But oftentimes there is some meta aspect to it. Not necessarily metaphysical or meta in universe, but the nature of the article and the subject matter is actually explaining something about the SCP Wiki. So yeah. What do you guys think about when you think about 001s?
Do we arm wrestle, or you want to go first?
I can take it, yeah. So for me, like Grigori said, I agree that it's kind of like a capstone project. I have written my own, and I have no plans of writing another one, because I'm also of the opinion that everybody should get one. It's very controversial.
Well, too bad.
Yeah, I know. An 001, for me, like I said, is the pinnacle. For me, it was taking a bunch of my old deleted articles and trying to spin it in a way for what happened in universe. Why are those articles deleted? So I had a lot of fun with that, and I think that's a similar way everybody looks at it, is taking a personal element that you have of the SCP Wiki. Round Their House's proposal comes to mind, or his is sort of about how the old site, as we've moved on from that and buried it, we paid our respects, but now we're moving on to something better and newer. So his 001 proposal is about burying the old overseers, which are all author avatars of a bunch of older characters and a bunch of older authors who are no longer around. So I look at it as a very personal piece, something that you do want to be remembered for, something that you put the most work in. And I think that's what most people look at it as.
Yeah. I've come to think of it as I've said this a couple different times in different places, but as a curiosity cabinet, because the 001 list is in practice now filled with really interesting stories that are heightened as opposed to your regular SCP. They've usually got a bit more drama, they've usually got a bit more flourish and a little bit more style, they're often longer, and you can scroll through there and you aren't going to find very many things that are just another story. As for how it started out, it literally started out as they couldn't agree that anybody had written one that was good enough, so they locked the slot until somebody came up with one worthy of the slot, which was the actual language used on the page at the time. And then they were like, we'll just do a contest where you propose which one you want to be in, and eventually we'll vote on which one. And we just eventually decided not to do that, which is why they're called proposals, but there will never be an accepted proposal. And people are on the Reddit and shit are always saying, when are you going to decide which one's real? And the answer is never. Absolutely never. And people are always, oh, there's another one. Oh, yeah, it sucks when people do a big project and put a lot of extra work into it, and then you get to read it for free. I hate that. Wish they'd just stop doing that.
Yeah, it's one of those things that happened completely organically, and it's funny that it happened because the people that were around in the community was much, much, much smaller then.
Right.
Were like, well, we're not sure if anybody's really done anything that really is important enough to be the first thing, and instead worked its way through the pack that we could get to this point where it's just something. It can be any number of things, and because of that, we've gotten some of the really most ambitious and interesting articles. And none of them are, I would say, perfect, but like they're always, like you said, they're kind of on another level. And you can tell just by the amount of effort that goes into most of them, at least the ones that have come out in like the last 8-9 years.
Sorry, go on. Didn't mean to interrupt you there. I was just going to say, it's complementary to the idea of the K-Cons, because with the K-Con, everybody tries to bring their best. You try to do your best job, and one person wins, and everybody else is fucked. You can't get a K-Con. It's not a thing most people can get. It's not something most people will ever be able to get, because we decided that those slots that everybody wants will be done by a contest where one person gets them. And with the 001 slot, it is equally like exciting. The very first SCP, and instead of going only one person gets it, we go for this one thing, everybody can put in their guess, and as long as it's not crap and as long as it lives, it gets to be there forever, which is it's nice. It's not a consolation prize. It is obviously less. There is less scrutiny than a K-Con, and it is less prestigious than winning a K-Con. But it is still like it is the very next thing, because you still have to go through way more scrutiny than you have to go through for anything else you post to the wiki, except for a joke article.
Yeah.
Joke articles definitely get more scrutiny than 001 proposals.
Yeah. But for whatever reason, and it's great. Pretty much everybody in the community kind of drops what they're doing to look at a new proposal.
The only guaranteed way to get people to read something is to either do a joke article or to do a 001 proposal.
Yeah, it's funny about joke articles being like, I feel like everyone jumps in just to be like, I just can't wait to say this isn't funny.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's with both of these kinds of articles. With 001s, people jump in to go, doesn't feel like a 001, and with jokes, they jump in to go, I didn't laugh.
Yeah, the whole it doesn't feel like blank is so stupid, because there's such a variety. Like, there are ones like Tuftos and Kallinins, and there are ones like the Record or like placeholders. There's the Prototype. There's the fucking Factory. No, you know what I mean? Like, there's so much variation.
The Factory's a bad example since there's two of them.
Right, yeah. Or like that Wondertainment one, which I love. But
was that Wrong John Silver, or I can't remember?
Yeah.
I think is that who it is? Who did the Wondertainment one? It's a toy maker.
I think it's Wrong John Silver.
But just
Simple Toy Maker? Jim North. It's actually Jim North.
Okay. I thought that Wrong John Silver, though.
Yeah, they did one. I can't remember what it is.
But, and that one is, well, we can't decide because the lore doesn't really decide which one of these versions of Dr. Wondertainment is real. Well, here, I'll explain that. And the way they explained it was like the way I explained the Deva on the hub, which was all of it.
Or the way you explain VKTM, which is just, fuck you, it's everything. Who knows? Looks like there is no Wrong John Silver proposal. That's weird. Why was that in my head?
I think
Thanks, Plague, for backing me up, even.
Isn't there a Dr. Wrong and a Long John Silver?
There is a wrong. That's the consensus, but there is no silver. I think we've all just been imagining. We're imaginative bunch, the authors.
No, he has one. WJS proposal.
Oh, it's WJS. That's why it's done like that, so that you can't fucking find it. Good job.
Grigori, you brought up scrutiny I actually disagree that O1s aren't given as much scrutiny as a KCON. I've gotten some of the most insightful comments, critical comments, just regular comments on my KCON entries and my O1 entries. I think that a 001, even today when there's almost 50 of them now, probably maybe even over, it's still taken.
You're getting close to 50.
There's still a level of respect to that slot, similar to how much people respect like a KCON slot.
Yeah, that's what I do mean that. I just mean that it's slightly more on the KCONs because they're a artificially scarce commodity, right?
Well, also because contests just get so much attention. People that have not been involved for months and months and months will pop back in and either do an entry or read all the entries for KCONs. That isn't always the case with O1s.
Yeah, but as a general rule, when a 001 goes up, even if the site is dead, it gets read very frequently by a lot of people. If you posted one right now when the site essentially is dead right now, then it would probably still, if it wasn't crap, jump right up there. Or jump right down there.
And pretty much all the surviving ones, it's rare to see one under 100 because it gets so much attention. And if they're surviving, it's usually because it's like, wow, this idea was worth it. Even some of the controversial ones, you can be like, wow, this is something. There are ones that I don't like that I still look at and go, wow, this is, I'm impressed by the project, even if I didn't like it.
Yep, there's at present no English language originally posted 001s on the site that are lower than 60. The lowest rated, of course, is Aberstrom's proposal at -68, but that doesn't count because it's archived.
Yeah, it barely counts.
It's just there because it's old.
Oh, that's right. The most recent one is under 100, but it's recent.
There's always a more recent one.
Yeah, it'll pop up.
They all move up eventually, or if they survive, they always move up.
Yeah.
They don't always survive, and sometimes we've seen really good ones die. That's less frequently a thing.
Yeah. Anyway.
And sometimes they come back later. I mean, the Neon God was originally a 001. It was completely rewritten to be a KCON entry.
Yeah. Hey, that worked out pretty goddamn well.
It certainly did. Although, as I will talk about fairly shortly, it makes a lot of sense that the Neon God was a 001. But anyway.
Okay, so we are going to talk about 3 articles today. We're going to talk about Tufto's proposal. We're going to talk about Callanan's proposal, which I'm sorry, I know you guys probably just skimmed it, but that's real long. And we're going to talk about McDoctor's proposal, which is the most bite-sized, I would say. But these are all pretty long, and they've got a lot of really interesting twists and turns. So we're gonna
McDoctor. It's longer than it is in word count because it requires you to exercise your brain on almost every sentence.
Yeah. All right, so Plague,
Tufto.
You picked Tufto's.
Yep.
So, and this one came out. I actually wrote down dates for this for some reason. So this one came out in May, end of May 2018.
Yep, feels like a 2018 article for sure.
It does, yeah.
This is one of the highest rated ones. It's in the top 5.
And rightfully
No
fucking
surprise.
so. I used to think not that much of this because of the Scarlet King connection. And man, rereading it just made me kind of go, what the fuck was I talking about? This thing's great.
Yeah, this is one of the first articles I read that really hooked me into this site, I'd say.
That's fair.
So basically, it's an article that is about the Scarlet King. So it's originally presented in the description as describing the Scarlet King as some sort of primeval god that the Foundation has been investigating since the 1800s. And the entire article, for the most part, is basically just a conversation between 2 guys. Robert Montauk and then a member of the Children of the Scarlet King who's given the designation POI. 3172. And so as you continue, you peel back the mystery of what the Scarlet King is. And it's eventually revealed that the Scarlet King is sort of a manifestation of, or the counter to the Foundation being personification of modernity, as the Scarlet King is that primal energy that needs to counter that modernity.
Yeah, it's anti-modernity as a god, basically, which is a really clever idea.
Yeah, it's really so. Just some basics about what the Scarlet King is, if you don't know, listeners. Scarlet King is a concept that's existed on the wiki before this article for quite a while. I think all the way back to 231, and it's popped up here or there. A lot in Clef's stuff early on, and then was kind of taken and run with it. There's this very widespread cult called the Children of the Scarlet King, and in a lot of ways prior to this article, it was described as this kind of unknowable eldritch thing that is more akin to like just evil with a capital E. There's a article 2317, which is it's this giant thing under the earth that they think maybe is the Scarlet King, and that's like it's just the devil. It's just the fucking devil. It's a red guy with horns, and this article takes that as the starting point, and then kind of leads you through the garden path in this, in a fairly roundabout way. So. Let's see. It's said to exist in several alternate dimensions simultaneously, and it's always trying to. The cultists and others are always trying to get the Silent King to manifest here. And the reason the Foundation doesn't want to do that, other than just we have enough deadly gods, is it's going to cause a serious K-class scenario wherein the imminent alteration of reality or eradication of all human life is caused by the interaction between two anomalous objects of radically different type. But you learn that right after finding out that containment is not necessary, which is a pretty great hook, because the conprox and the actual description part at the very beginning are pretty small, and it's like, wait a minute,
The Scarlet King, object class safe.
yeah, it's just weird. And we find out that Montauk, this doctor who has been mentioned before in 231 especially, downgrades it to safe.
Montauk.
Procedure 110 Montauk.
110, yeah. I don't memorize it well because I don't like thinking about it.
Yeah. Downgrades it to safe, proposes it to the O5 Council. They agree, done deal. And he's the expert because he's been studying the Scarlet King forever. He was the lead on both 231 and 2317. And so, we should trust his word. But also, they just said that if it ever gets manifested here, we're fucked. And there are all these instances later on that show either the Children of the Scarlet King or the GOC or the elements of the Serpent's Hand or any number of other miniature little cult groups that in recent years, not just way back in history, but in recent years have tried somehow to manifest it here in our reality. So it seems like, this is a pretty big deal. This is important. Why? How is it safe? What are the activities we should be doing? And basically, the interviews with Depeche, with this person of interest, and these other supplementary documents are leading you to the understanding of why. Like, why it was declared as safe and what the actual discussion was. The interviews are really good because they kind of frame all the following information. But the real meat is in this, and it's such an obvious Tufto article because it does such a good job of factory and like history and first or primary accounts. Right? Is that what you call it, Harry?
Yeah.
So, like, for example, there's a guy named Jack Hurst, or I can't remember his name, but he was a defector from the cult, and he had this crazy reality bending power that he could put his consciousness back in time into other people's experiences and experience events firsthand. He wasn't actually traveling in time; he couldn't change history, but his consciousness would go back, which is such a cool idea that it could be an entire article by itself, by the way. And he experiences a fight, like a battle between the Scarlet King and the Children of the Urns, which is SCP-3838. And these were these nomads that were consistently opposing the Scarlet King's forces. And in that battle, 7 brides of the king are stolen away, and all these things that seem very momentous. But the most important thing is that he keeps flashing back and forth between the actual battle and this other place that is sort of a blighted wasteland where everything is red and there's this strong wind, and on the wind you can kind of hear a voice. The thing about it's broken up into these 3 phases, which is blood, concrete, and howling, because the interviewee, the person of interest, says that there are these 3 laws. There are these 3 laws that define everything about the Scarlet King, which is the law of blood, the law of concrete, and the law of howling. And included is next a log of attempts to bring the king into our world. There are some interesting examples. For example, the GOC tried in 2014, but the records have been expunged. But it was done to exacerbate tensions of a historical time in order to bring forth and destroy a significant occult threat, which sounds like the most stupid fucking idea ever. Let's summon the devil because we got to deal with this other thing.
We got to deal with this other thing that we won't name, just like at the beginning when there's this other thing that's opposed to the Scarlet King that, boy, they destroy each other, so we better not let that happen. I wonder what this other thing that's opposed to the Scarlet King.
Right. And newsflash, it's us, right?
It's us.
It's the Foundation.
Although I feel like if the Neon God had been a 001, it could have been something else.
Right.
We'll talk about that.
Anyway, so I mean that's fun. The log of attempts is I'm not gonna sit down and read down the whole thing, but like it's clearly showing that despite the fact that this is safe and supposedly the Foundation doesn't need to do anything to keep it contained, there are people that on a regular basis, here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that have happened since 2009, where all these different people have tried to bust it open, including a splinter of the Serpent's Hand, which luckily it dealt with itself because it was a splinter group. The other Serpent's Hand stopped them, but it's like the Foundation shouldn't be doing anything to prevent this. And then we get into the law of concrete, and the interviewee says that the memoir from the guy that could go back in time mostly got it right, specifically the idea that the voice on the wind is more like the king than any red demon. It's not a monarch, it's not a god, it's sort of a force. And that the law of blood is the way the king ruled, the imposition of iron rule on the peasantry. So you get the sense of there being fairly naive in some ways idea that like the way that power was enforced in the past was through violence. I would argue it still is, but more threatened violence than actual. We get a report from the Foundation agent, I forget her name, in an 1889 snarling coup, which was the thing that was mentioned earlier because of this coup, which was an internal event of some sort. A lot of records were lost. And it's said that the accepted understanding of the Foundation was that it was started in response to the Scarlet King. But in the records that this agent found, interestingly enough, this agent was later decided to be terminated by the O5 Council. The records show that no, that had nothing to do with it. That there was an attack by SCP-173. You might have heard of that one.
No, what is that one?
It's a statue.
There's so many statues.
I know, but my favorite part about this is not just look, he mentioned the popular one. My favorite part is this is all about the law of concrete, and what the fuck is SCP-173 made out of?
Concrete and rebar.
Right. So
and Krylon spray paint.
It actually serves a.
I mean, I don't know. I've never read that article.
It doesn't take you long. You should read it.
Well, as long as it's got a good picture, I'll take a look.
And we get this log of votes by the O5 Council, and then always a response in some way, a related incident that is connected in some way to the Scarlet King. Possibly a response. It's certainly implied that this was a response to those specific votes. And a lot of times they have to do with 2317 or a voting on a site system or a universal classification. So
Building up the foundation.
Right. Yeah. Something about making the foundation into what it is, a standardized organization that defines anomalies in this way by this system, causes a reaction from this force.
As the foundation concretizes itself.
Right. And there's this manifesto from the Children of a Scarlet King cultist that points out that the problem with the modern is that it's not real. Our buildings are made of concrete as we shamble each day to jobs and lives created solely for the purposes of maintaining their own system. And there's only one alternative way to live: to cast down the law of concrete is to raise up the law of blood. So the law of concrete is modernity. It is this new concept of society where supposedly I have a bit of a problem with this. Supposedly violence is not the way in which rule of law is enforced or societal norms. I would argue that it's not as obvious as, say, maybe back when the Mongols were taking people over, but
I don't find the Children of the Scarlet King at all convincing.
because we still live in a fucking police state, so and most Western democracies are. So, and then finally we get to the Howling, where everything kind of comes together. And throughout, the interviewee is kind of stringing Dr. Montauk along. He's twisting him along. He's saying, "Oh, well, you should figure this out. You should figure that out." And ultimately coming to the idea that the Scarlet King was not a deity. The Scarlet King is an idea. And like Plague was just saying, the Scarlet King is a response to the Foundation. But I think it's actually even a little bit wider, because even if the Foundation didn't exist, it would still be a response to these modern concepts of anomalous versus non-anomalous. In a lot of ways, I didn't think about it at the time, but this lays the groundwork in a lot of ways for 6500. It takes a very much more metaphysical
that occurred
route
for me as well.
But it centers around the idea that the Foundation is defining the anomalous through its concrete ways, and that and it's very easy to make the next shift, which we made in 6500, which was that shift, that definition is arbitrary, because all these things existed beforehand and the universe was fine, or if not fine, that it existed.
Right.
And now we go to so much trouble to impose understanding on the anomalies. And we find this note from Dr. Montauk that is clearly crossing stuff out that is more like metaphysical, and then defining 001, defining here's what the Scarlet King is. And it seems like it's like imposing will on it, like the way
he's fighting the urge to agree with the anti-modernism as he's trying to be the modern scientist.
Right. And ultimately it comes down to the interviewee kind of somehow forcing or resisting anyone coming into his containment chamber, and says he will only talk to Montauk, and points out that the idea that the Scarlet King is it's not the pre-modern and it's not the modern, it's the conflict between those things. It's the screaming rage that is kind of highly explained in that excerpt of the Bengali work, which I'm assuming it's not Lala Raya, but it's I'm probably not any good at
any Indians in the chat.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
But it says things like, because what is he but the cry for a forgotten age? He is the British peasant staring up at the red sky, the Bengali widow's weeping and shaven head, the Aztec priest ripping out another's heart. It's the aspect of rage at modernity, but I think even more so the rage at colonialism, at the globalism that the world has become, where, universal forces have defined what life is everywhere without an understanding for individual cultures. And so that's what they mean by modernity. And the thing that most encompasses modernity, at least in response to or at least in the person of interest opinion, is the Foundation. it's because if the Foundation didn't exist, or something like it didn't exist, then maybe the Scarlet King wouldn't exist, because it's a response to us, not us being a response to it.
Something I've always found interesting, just that rereading this kind of reminds me of sort of the meta aspect of us as writers in this universe. We define the anomalous based on our own rules. Whereas, like, we look at, like, let's say, I'll also bring up the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where you have people with superpowers, and that's considered normal there. So, from, like, we are kind of imposing our rule of law, of, like, natural law, onto another universe where these anomalies do exist. So, what's to say that that is not natural there?
Yeah.
And
Right.
that's
funny.
sort of where I think that this article was, at least to me, was influenced by and spoke a lot to.
Yeah.
That's a good tension, because we talk about a setting that is like explicitly magical. It is absolutely full of stuff that doesn't make sense, and it is definitely the norm that things not make sense at this point. And even in 2018, when he was writing, there was thousands of these things, and yet we've got this organization we continue to write going like, nope, none of that's normal. Gotta hide it all.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, that's why I brought up 6500 earlier, because ultimately, if you make it through it, the first half, 50,000 words or so, the defining tension of what is causing the impasse is this nature of the Foundation and the Veil, imposing what normalcy is, because it's an artificial concept. Because certainly, was normalcy a thing when the Deva were around? 15,000 years ago? No, that was normal. So, calling something that's existed for millennia, or outside of time and space, or 15 minutes, whatever, as abnormal, as an anomaly, it is incredibly arrogant. And it is interesting that, in many ways, the Scarlet King is sort of the impasse. Not exactly, because, like I said, this takes a much more metaphysical perspective. But the ultimate conclusions that Montauk makes, although we're kind of expected to put two and two together, because the O5 Council has a vote, and they pretty much soundly deny it, based on a proposal from Montauk to sort of change the status quo. And we're expected to kind of figure out what that change was meant to be, but it basically means let's be less rigid in our definitions of the anomalous, because the thing that's empowering the Scarlet King is the rage at this concrete set of rules.
Yeah, to me, this is the pinnacle of a tough OP. Still, my favorite from him is 5005, which is Lamplight. I recommend everybody reads that. But this has all of his hallmarks, and I'm not sure, I didn't know him in 2018, but I know he had that style because I've read all of his stuff, of these first-person perspectives, the primary sources, being in a room, people talking. So this,
especially, he does that in a lot of his articles.
Yeah.
Cascadia has exactly the same format.
Yeah, I would say that he, at this point, this being an 001, and being confident posted, he had that style down. And I know when I was writing mine, I wanted to make sure all of my hallmarks were there. And I feel like he had a similar perspective here. And you could definitely see that here. And it really, while it's not my favorite from him, my favorite 001, it is probably, if you're going to read anything by Tufto, this will be one of them. Just to get a feel for what he does.
It's incredible. It's incredible. I only have one critique of it, really. But the one by him that really kills me is that one we read for the show, and it's, what was that guy's name that I think Rounder made it up on Wander's Library, where it's this wild adventure kind of guy that's always going off and doing different things, and has to do with him in French-controlled Vietnam.
Oh, are you thinking? It's been a long time. I don't remember. This isn't Lyle Burnley, is it?
Yeah. Lyle Burnley show.
Which is.
I
should know who created Lyle Burnley, because Rounder
didn't Rounder
violently. No, he just loves Loud.
Oh,
Like,
awesome.
Rounder like violently flings the article that created him at anybody who will read it.
She's written for him too.
It's like the autobiography.
The heresiography, right?
Yeah.
Heresiography
is the one I'm talking about. Yeah.
And it's his will is the original article.
Right.
From the Wanderer's Library. We'll just quickly get this up because it's an awesome article, and he shows that to anybody who's even vaguely considering looking at the Wanderer's Library. And it is by account deleted. It is by God damn it, now I'm gonna have to use Chrome on the Wanderer's Library, and I hate doing that. Carry on while I figure out how to do this.
But what's interesting, I think, is that this ends with Montauk actually like reversing his position, even though he absolutely thinks that the children of the Scarlet King and anyone that serves or is trying to bring about the Scarlet King is in the wrong. At the end, he signs a letter as a child of the Scarlet King because, as he says, I know this path is wrong, but at least it is a path. And by that, I think what Tato is saying is that the Foundation isn't even a path. It's just sitting there kind of denying the reality around them in this consistently frustrating way that's so frustrating that the universe itself, or some force that is empowered by the universe itself, is screaming to come out. And if it ever is so, then it's kind of unclear whether or not at the end, if the Scarlet King was to come through, that humanity would die, or would it be that the Foundation died?
Yeah, because I feel like the Foundation probably is the thing that'll be obliterated in this.
Right. And life would change, possibly for the worse. But
which they all is definitely for the worse, but it's not what they're. It's definitely the Foundation is not morally white in this concept as well. The Montauk stuff is interesting because something that the person of interest, Depeche Spivak, keeps trying to get at as they're talking is, so you're Dr. Montauk. Your name is on the gang rape protocol. Okay, what's up with that? Aren't you? Right. So, Procedure 110 Montauk from SCP-231. Lots of people have their explanations of what it actually is, to be like cleverly like, oh, it looks like it's actually this. It looks like it's actually this. What it is in the article is it's very strongly implied that to keep a primordial entity in check, the Foundation authorizes and in fact enforces gang rape of somebody over and over again, designed to be like an absolute shock. Like, these people are maintaining reality, and here are the lengths to which they're willing to go to. And it's generally something that almost every author knows about, and most authors look at it and go, oh yes, the 2000s, the edgelord era, blah, including myself. And it's used here, though, and it's used in absolutely brilliant sense, because you keep expecting it, because he won't explain what it is, and Depeche is bugging him about it, and it never comes up. And you keep expecting it to be one of those stories where it turns out that it's actually about petting a whale or some bullshit. Because there are lots of articles where they go, well, actually, if you look at the redactions, you can actually see that you can fit a lot of things into those redactions, and it's actually a nice thing, and it's a clever article thing that a lot of people have done a few times. And you feel like it's going to go there. Like, eventually Montauk is going to go, well, actually, it's a completely different thing. And the article never does that. It isn't a different thing. It is the reprehensible thing. And Spivak is like, yeah, and the reason he's poking him about it is because that's not a science response to anything to make that your protocol. That's not a rational, concrete way of doing anything. That's an angry raging against the concept of anti-modernity. It's the scientist going like, I'm so mad at the Scarlet King existing and being this howl of anti-modernity that I'm going to do this to fucking hurt it, which is a Scarlet King-y kind of thing to do. It's not a science-y kind of thing to do. So he uses the fact that this is a reprehensible thing to be like, this guy was already kind of experiencing uncertainty in what side of the situation he was on.
He's using that as an example, also, the character, to explain to Montauk what the Scarlet King is, because eventually he gets to the point where he's like saying, listen, whatever it is you don't want to talk about, it shouldn't have worked. There's not a magic spell. That's not a thing. there's no secret lore that this reprehensible act, whatever it is, that you're doing to this teenage girl because she's pregnant with the Antichrist or whatever. Thanks, Clive. Is it's not an effective tool against the Scarlet King. The only reason it worked is because you actually were just responding in a way that had nothing to do with modernity. Yeah, like you were saying. And I think it's really interesting that he uses it that way. I think it's like those stories that define, try to redefine, to retask what it is that's happening in 231, what Project Montauk is, or Operation Montauk, or whatever the fuck it is.
Procedure.
And that's cool, and that's interesting because it's not saying it's okay, but it is here we're using it for this interesting constructive narrative reason, and I don't give a shit. I hate it.
Yeah.
This is my big critique of this piece, that this could have worked easily without it. And
you don't like the 110 being in there under any circumstances.
No, and I think this validates it in the original article in a lot of ways, because it's a great piece of literature that explains why.
So instead of being a crappy old SCP article, it's a really good new one, and it has this thing in it. So
and it says that thing is important to this understanding of the story, and I think he could have written around it. And it's my only critique I have. I think it's a brilliant fucking piece, but I think that part of it sucks.
I do like that one tale where the procedure is described as a bedtime story.
Right, they all gather together and read her a bedtime story. Yeah,
I do like that one. I think it's cute.
There are a few like that.
I just wish it didn't exist.
Yeah.
But I totally understand why Tufto is trying to legitimize it in a way that makes it narratively interesting. I totally understand why those people have written those tales or any other types of projects to say, no, actually it's this. But really, I just want it gone. Yeah. I just want it edited out. Just come back to the site and edit it out. That's it.
I do love all of these pieces by Tufto because he's always got these philosophical things going on at the core of them. Even the person that Montauk is arguing with is named, I'm pretty sure, Dipesh Spivak. And that's two Indian post-colonial philosophers, Dipesh Chakrabarty and Dipesh Chakrabarty. English! No, that's not English, that's Hindi. Dipesh Chakrabarty and Gayatri Spivak were both really famous post-colonial theorists. So he's made his villain a gestalt of multiple post-colonial theorists, and that person is talking to Dr. Rape and very, very thoroughly deconstructing him right in front of his face, despite the fact that obviously the Scarlet King stuff is also not a positive, right? Because none of these impersonal forces are particularly positive, which is the whole point in the Neon God, where sprawling, concrete, glowing neon urbanism mindlessly expands across the galaxy and just eats uniqueness and devours hope and things and is nothing and is meaningless. And I think that is completely opposed to the Scarlet King, which is the equally unintelligent, just raging and angering. And I feel like if that was in the 001 form instead of being 7005, I think that opposition is probably pretty key to it. And he's really good at just thinking through philosophical concepts by embodying them and then having people oppose them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to what you were saying about the post-colonial philosophers, he's even got that part that's the excerpt of the Bengali work, which is, I'm sure it's not directly aping their points, but it's not
really particularly them at all.
But it's speaking to the anger against colonialism, and it's speaking to it from that area of the world, and I think that's all intentional. There's one part from that from the Bengali manifesto that I really wanted to read, which was, modernity is a sin and he is the correction, so that we can once again live as we must. And you think it's going to say, any number of things that's actually we're trying to relieve ourselves of this terrible modernity, but once again live as we must, cold and hungry and starving and very, very afraid.
Right.
That's the fucking goal, because modernity is bullshit.
Be good little caveman. Yeah.
Because modernity is a lie, and at least that's true.
Yeah.
Fuck that.
Being cold is a definite thing that you can relate to directly and understand immediately.
I do like when authors have sort of like a thematic through line between at least the larger pieces. Like Tufto's, a lot of his are about like human condition type of stuff.
Yeah, big time.
Like brought to like even a, like for this one it's to a much larger scale. Neon God, much larger scale. And like I'll bring up 5005 again. It's about just like a researcher going through sort of imposter syndrome until they realize like I want
Hanging
to
out
take
with a bunch of hippies in a
yeah, I want to take control over my life and go actually see what's going on with this place and not being bound to the chain of like having to follow procedure. And like it works well like for all of his stuff because he knows what he's doing. He knows how to write this stuff and keep reinventing it over and over again. And it never gets old because there is so much you could sell. There are so many stories you could tell with that sort of theme, and I do hope that he continues.
Yeah, because like when people talk about Lamplight, they talk about, and then the point of it is, the big spoiler is you find out that Lamplight is blah, 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 blah. And it's like, no, that's actually not the point of the article at all. That's just him going, I know that you won't like this unless there's a reveal.
And it's
so
cool.
Here's a reveal. And it is a cool ass,
it's a
fucking
very
amazing
cool reveal.
cosmic
Let's
reveal. It's a very good reveal.
It's incredible.
But it's also... But that's not the point. The point is the trip you take to get there, which is the same in both of these articles.
Yeah.
This might be
'Cause, yeah,
controversial. I
Right?
don't particularly enjoy the reveal from Lamplight at the end. Like I mean I like the article a lot, but just like you said, I appreciated it much more just for like the dialogue and the character and the world building. That was my favorite part.
The main thing for sure, absolutely.
I like it.
I mean, people love that twist.
I like it because it evokes kind of a, I don't know, like a primordial terror that something like that could exist.
Yeah, there's a cosmic melancholy to it. It's kind of like the thing in Stephen King's It, which has all kinds of way worse problems than any of what we're talking about here, but it also has the very brief momentary implication that the like positive deity that's looking down on them all is dead, by the way, and has been dead for a while. There's the same sort of like, oh dear, what's going on sense going on at the end of Lamplight. But the main thing is Tufto's ability to write human beings having interesting thoughts about what it means to be human, which is going through all of the works that I've read.
When will Tufto write his Gunslinger?
Just combine them all, yeah. Get them all together at once.
Because
needs to get hit by a bus first.
It's so funny that like Stephen King. Sorry for a tangent. Stephen King had all these really interesting, like, oh, what does this mean? What is this force that this evil thing is doing? And like, didn't necessarily need to be connected. And clearly, he had this idea for a long time because he wrote the Gunslinger before he wrote, God, any number of the really famous novels. He wrote it like when he was in college, I think the first one. And then he just decides, listen, I'm just going to tell like a Lord of the Rings style epic story and we're going to explain goddamn everything. And I mean, I love the Gunslinger, but it's also kind of like, you could have left some mystery in there. Like, I love the Gunslinger so much. All of it. The Dark Tower, I mean. But, you know, by the end it was just like, well, now I understand everything. Thank you.
Yeah, you think he could have spent all that time he was working on that, learning how to end a story correctly.
You know, ironically, I think the best ending he's ever done is the end of the Dark Tower. That's controversial because a lot of people don't like it, but I think it's brilliant. It's got a lot to say, honestly. But whatever, we're not talking about that.
We're not talking about Stephen King. We're talking about a much better author.
I think it's a really big... I don't know if it's a crime exactly, but I think it's horrible to me that people that don't read the SCP Wiki don't experience Tufto's. You know, like, right? I just feel like this is you're being constrained here. Somebody needs to give him at least one contract to write a novel with an actual, you know, budget for promotion behind it, because this man can do long form storytelling like so few people can do.
Absolutely.
On the wiki or off of it, because it's always so satisfying. Like, it always gets to the end and you're like, oh, wow. Like, you took me on a journey, and it's not always fast paced exactly, but it's always intriguing and it takes you're never bored. And then there's almost always sort of, I don't know if it's always a revelation, but there's always this sense of like, and now I look back at all these things we just read and go, oh shit. I mean, this one absolutely has that. Neon God, I think, is the most effective at that personally. But
that one, when 7Con was on and I was reading my competitors as they were coming out, generally with unbelievable, incomparable trepidation every time I would open one, because I kept waiting for the one that was obviously going to be 7,000. And that one, I think, was the one where I hit it and I went, oh shit, this might be the one. I was reading it with like fear. I'm like, oh, this is pretty good. And then by the end of it, I'd forgotten that there was a contest. I'd forgotten that I was in the contest. I'd forgotten why I had started reading it. There was nothing but that story, and I cried at the end of it. It was super cool. I felt like writing was like the coolest thing ever for several hours after reading that. I was like, you know what? Writing's meaningful. Writing is good.
Hey, I'm not trying to butter you up, but
we like Tufto.
I think a lot of people might think that way about your contest entry too.
I don't know how to answer that.
Nope, I know. I knew immediately.
Yeah.
I knew immediately. I was like, yeah, he got it.
I mean, I can't really, with my personality, my actual one, not my front personality, can't really engage with that statement except to say thank you. But like, I felt that way when I saw 6,000. I went, yep, that one wins. He showed it to me in crit, and I went, that's gonna win. And I was angry about it because 6,500 was really good. But anyway, I kind of get, every once in a while, the entry in the contest that wins is always retrospectively obvious, but at the time you'll see one and you'll go, that is the one that fits the theme the most, that people are going to read.
I didn't like 5,000 the most. What ended up being 5,000 the most, but when I read it,
I feel like you could still tell it was going to win.
Yeah. When I read it, I was like, this is going to win. I mean, I'm not bashing it, by the way. 5,000 is fantastic.
Yeah. And obviously a big part of it is,
I'm always saying that my personal best ones were Yassi's and Jacko Related's. Dragon of Middenwald and Sankerson.
Dragon of Middenwald is
both just
the other book.
Fucking incredible.
Yeah, and in most contests, there's a very large group of people who go like, that's not the one I would have picked. In every single KCON, there's people going like that, and then talk about it for years to come. I'm just lucky that most of mine do it on the in spaces that I'm not in, so I don't have to see it. Anyway,
too many characters.
Read a whole. I have to read a whole canon to understand it. How dare you?
You explicitly do not have to read any other pages to understand that.
Yeah. At least you can't look at 7,000 and say, "Oh, this isn't really an article. It's more like a canon hub."
We've obviously got KCONs on the brain because presumably some point between Christmas and the end of January there will be another one announced.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, I honestly I'm ready. I'm excited. I want to write some big stuff, although I do have something big coming out at some point in the next week. But anyway, Tufto's done.
Does the black moon howl?
Only for those with an unwavering desire to hear the truth.
Access granted.
You have been selected for an opportunity, an orientation as a trusted associate, if you will, into the secured, contained, and protected files of the Foundation. SCP Unredacted distributes new files for review Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern on secure channels on YouTube, Spotify, and scp-unredacted.captivate.fm.
Hey there, fans of Simply Creative People. We're still mostly unsponsored, so any financial help you can give us through Harry's or my Ko-Fi helps keep the show running. If you can't support us financially, just try to spread the word about the show. We've grown in the last year of production, but I think there's still a wide audience of SCP fans out there who would get a lot from our podcast. Finally, in every episode we leave a link in the description to my author page and to Harry's, along with our guests. Consider clicking through and checking out our work. We've both been so pleased to see the growth of the show and hope you'll consider reading some of our stories on the wiki. Thanks so much for all the support during this first startup year of the show. Here's to 5 more years of episodes.
Yeah. So next, we're going to talk about Kalinen's proposal, which came out in November of 2016. It's 9 documents, and some of them are pretty long, although a lot of them aren't.
I'll be right back. You guys keep going.
Okay. This one's like I mean, like Yossi wrote a series of declassifieds on the SCP Declassified Reddit to explain it. So it's pretty complicated. Basically, what you have to understand is that there is an anomaly called SCP-2798, which is a shield of anomalous energy around the Earth that was created by the Foundation in order to contain SCP-001. Specifically in 1971, although it was decided to start trying to do it in 1954. The way that this works is that it makes the entire Earth seem like from far away, at least to however 001 is discovering us, that the Earth is one singular living entity, and it reduces 001's focus on humanity. Because the 001 is a sapient entity or entities capable of initiating and exerting control over anomalous phenomena on Earth and in all regions of space observable thus far. SCP-001 is hostile and is believed to be motivated by a desire to cause profound distress and suffering to humanity on a planetary scale. The methodology in achieving this goal appears to include undermining large-scale human institutions and specifically eroding belief in rational consensus reality. Shortly after the formal establishment of the Foundation, this activity increased sharply, and early statistical models suggest a coordinated actor behind a significant amount of documented anomalies. So this is a thing that if it isn't the creator of all anomalies, it is able to exert some influence on anything that is anomalous. We get a series of SCPs that have been changed in some way because of the failing of this prior anomaly. SCP-2798, which is this shield, starts failing in 2005, and once it starts failing, all these well-known articles are described in a log very quickly. Here's what it was like before, and here's like what it was afterwards. And it's not always a specifically more dangerous thing, but it's always a strange and more effective transformation, something that is more insidious. But this is in many ways a series of short stories. It was released one day at a time. It was like a big event when it came out. Callan was like, I'm going to drop this one, and then we're going to next day, or, I don't know exactly how it was spaced, but it was not all dropped at once. It is a hub that goes to all these, and a very boring looking hub, but, and it's just a series of documents. The first one being Harbinger, which is sort of a prologue featuring 05-2, who is approaching one of the SCPs from Series 1, 411, to get some precognition and prophecy, to find out if the thing that is happening now, which is all the anomalies are kind of going out of control and humanity is starting to freak out, if there's any sort of future for humanity, and if whether or not there's some reassurance. And the answers that she gets implies that yes, they are, but it turns out that this anomaly seems to be from this other place, this place that 001 comes from, and it calls the 05 a prodigal daughter, and says both he and she are from this planet of the hands, and she will return home soon. We see a series of notable SCPs changing dramatically, like I mentioned, but before that we see in the SCP document itself a failing of 2798, and after that updates from Foundation facilities all over the world and also other important spots within the world, showing pretty much all of society falling apart slowly but surely. And the way that it's doing that is unclear, but basically it has to do with the anomalous. Everything that is anomalous is being changed in some way and is breaking out of containment. And it's sort of like the way it's described in 5000, where the Foundation in this other universe just releases everything to fuck with humanity. Well, this is sort of a thing that's out of the Foundation's control, but is on a similar level. We get a series of short stories after this that basically slowly but surely piece together what this thing is. We get continued deliberations, which is 05-2 getting a call from 05-3 saying, wants to know why 05-2 defeated the vote. And there's this vote that apparently was defeated that was 05-3's last-ditch effort to try and put the lid on. It's implied to be one of the big things that the Foundation has always got in its back pocket, like SCP-2000 or like 055 being put into 579 to reset the universe, or etc., etc., etc. But the vote was denied, and the vote was denied because 052 pushed for it to be denied, convinced members of the council to vote against, because she went to those precognitives, in fact all of them, and they all gave her a similar kind of message that there is a future for humanity, and it involves a utopia. Whether or not that means we will survive, this generation or this organization, who knows, but to her that's enough of a reason to not do some latch stitch, mass evacuation of Earth.
Yeah. I this one is very controversial to a lot of people.
Yeah.
I always found that interesting, just because, like, I guess just me, you, Harry were from different time periods of when, like, Cal Lennon was around. So we don't really get to feel like, I don't. But I did enjoy this one. I really do like it. My favorite part is the table. I always love SCP articles with tables in them where they give you like short little blurbs just for like building up what's that word I'm looking for? Hype? I'm not sure. Building up tension stakes, yeah. Building up the stakes of it, and I really do like that part. And I this one's really unique because I don't think there is another 001 proposal where it's presented in this way, where you get a number, where you get an SCP. There are tales, there are straight SCP articles, both are shown as 001s, but this one is just a mix of all of that, and I really do like it for that reason, and it's surprising that this one was accepted as that so early on. You know what I mean? Like,
well, I think
where it's breaking the norm in a way.
Yeah, it is, and I understand why it's controversial. I used to say this was my favorite, and I don't know if I'd say that anymore. And I see the flaws for what it is. It kind of doesn't quite land the ending, in my opinion. But I'm just so goddamn impressed by it. It's incredibly ambitious. It starts off as this doom saying, it's the end of the world as we know it. And the mystery here is, what the fuck is it? And you really have to read between the lines for a lot of these articles. The next one is called A Night at the Movies, which is about how 057 back in 1954 received a communication from the SCP-001, and that communication was essentially a dream that led him specifically to a movie theater, and in that movie theater was played a movie called A Planet of the Hands, which had lots of military footage, scenes of large battles, aftermaths of bombing campaigns, stuff like that. I recognized Stalingrad from newsreels. And then some were film scenes, same quality as the other stuff, of what I had to be other events from history. Mass starvations, a volcano eruption or two, villages of Indians being run through by Spanish conquistadors, not very subtle. Then the scenes, and I'll explain, this is written from the perspective of a very overly privileged white man who was alive in the 1950s, which is why he says that. Then the scenes of the sites started, still shots of buildings and facilities, all of which I knew to be ours. Pretty clear message for us there. At the next instant, I was no longer in the theater. I was in my seat, but everything around me had changed. Vibrant colors, oversaturated hues, like a mad painter had conjured them. They were everywhere. People, things, places swirling all around me. All of it lit up like neon so that I could see things after I closed my eyes. It was just a mass of unspeakable acts. All the rape, murder, and pillage for thousands of years have been forced into this one room, each act phasing into and out of others, moment to moment. And then it ends with the scene of the 05 and others getting on a ship, sort of like what he perceives to be an ark or a wooden ship, and everything on the Earth destroyed. And it ends with, in Russian, that they try to translate, the best they get is "come home instead." Instead of all the death, all the horror, it's not really clear. But he interprets this as a threat from 001. And I think ultimately what we're supposed to take away from it is it's not a threat, this is an explanation of how we got here. that it's slowly but surely described that there is this other planet that 001 comes from. 001 is a civilization. 001 is a human civilization that is utopian. The thing that 05-2 was seeing in these future prophecies was not the future of humanity on Earth, but the future of humanity as a species, which is this utopian existence. But the way that, and the reason that they're doing this is everything is because 3 bits of info that you get from the next thing, which is a dream report, SCP-990, which is another SCP that like visits people in their dreams, said that there are 9 moons in the sky and varying sizes and phases. I'm in a child's body and he's still me, specifically talking from the perspective of a researcher who had this dream. And he gives them 3 bits of information. You are not in your proper place, and you, I believe, is describing all of humanity. 05-2 is absolutely correct, and she's disastrously wrong. And the prime mover behind what you know as SCP-001, above all other things, is love. So why is it doing all these horrible things if it loves us? And ultimately, what it, just to kind of, there's one where there's an imaginary baseball player, and the reason the Foundation is even there is because it turns out that this imaginary baseball player is actually going to be playing, and events go way out of control. But basically, it's to explain in a more detailed way how 001 can manipulate and enhance the anomalies, that it's getting harder and harder to fight, and that they consider these concepts of heaven and hell, that they are heaven and that we are hell. And basically, ultimately, what it comes down to, without reading every single goddamn one of these, because it's really impressive, there's a whole ass play in here, which is good. And the thing is this is all really good. Which, even though it was controversial, I think the reason it survived is it's all really well written. And that's not surprising. Callan's very talented. But basically, what this is long, long, long ago, before life on Earth existed, supposedly, there was another world in which humanity existed, and that world had 9 other worlds that surrounded it, the 9 moons, and each of these moons was a sacrifice to fueling this utopia. There are people on these moons that have been suffering in some way or another, and it's implied that the existence that we experience here on Earth is because all those people on one of the planets, the planet of the hands, ran and got somehow through time and space, ran and came to Earth to get away from this situation, because that was like a prison planet, or a planet that was specifically being made to suffer so that the utopia could continue to exist. And 001 was not able to physically follow, so what they've had to do is reach out through the anomalous. All of these anomalous things that have been happening throughout the history of the Foundation are 001 reaching out to us and trying to convince us that, hey, by the way, you shouldn't be sticking it out on that planet because it sucks. You need to come home willingly. And the core concept isn't really, like, it's cool, but that's not why I think this one matters. Why I think this one matters is that it's so big, and it takes you a significant amount of effort reading between the lines of these stories to understand what's really going on. That's why I think it's so ambitious.
Yeah, I touched on this a little bit, but like, you see a lot of hallmarks of modern articles in this, that like, you have these prose sections, you have these sections where it's just a picture, or like a div, a CSS div of documentation that is somewhat related but is sort of floating through the article just to give the reader supplementary information. And I agree with you that the ending is a little iffy. I do think it's a bit convoluted, and that is the major downside, because you can talk with, looking at Tough Does, where the answer is pretty straightforward. It's a reaction of that fight between modernity and being primal or being pre-modernity. Whereas this, it has a bit more that you need to understand, and a bit more that is less grounded, I'd say. I think everybody here can understand the concept of modernity and pre-modernity. Whereas this is a little more out there. It's a little more science fiction. It's higher You need to understand the entire article to understand that concept. But as a piece of writing, as a show of Kalinen's talents, I think this is the perfect piece.
Oh yeah.
Not my favorite from him by any measure, but a real like an 001 proposal should. This I could see as being his crowning achievement on the site. It shows everything that he is good at.
Yeah, I really like. The thing I really, really like is there's a core narrative being told, and it's all off the page. Well, it's not all off the page. But, you know, there's these parts where it's a dream report, and it's a description of what this doctor is experiencing in the dream. And then there's another dream report, and then there's this experience with the imaginary baseball player. And then there's, you know, the SCP itself. And then there's this fucking play. And it's like, well, why is there a play? Well, because SCP-001 doesn't know how to communicate directly with us. All it can do is communicate through performance. So it forces us to do this a lot of homework, a lot like McDoctorates does in a different way, to get at the core narrative. My problem with the ending is not that it's bad, or that it's convoluted, or that the concepts are too big and you have to sit down and really break it down. My problem with the ending is that it's boring. Like it's out of nowhere. Like every piece leading up to the last piece is fucking excellent. Even a play, which was like, whoa, what the fuck? There's a play here? And I don't know, maybe I'm in the minority. You know, a lot of people that are around the site maybe don't have experience with playwright stuff, but I love plays. You know, I've always wanted to write my own. So it's a really good one. It reminds me a lot of classic Greek drama, intentionally so. And then the ending is sort of this prose piece about people from an NTF that are existing in Argentina after everything's kind of gone to shit, and interacting with characters that showed up in the play, and it's kind of this final conflict, but it feels almost disconnected from the rest of it. And it's important because what it's showing, what it's ultimately trying to say through the events and the conversations that happened in this last piece is, sure, this society was quote unquote, it loves us, and that's why it's doing it. And sure, they're doing this for a utopia, but in reality, they're just as fucked up as we are. Because think about it, what sort of society is literally built on the suffering of others and calls itself a utopia? So I like the messaging. I just feel like that last piece could have done it different. I don't know. Anyway, it's not a bad piece of writing by any means. And the thing as a whole, I think is, like I said, really impressive. I read this one pretty early on. It wasn't the first 001 I read, but it was within the first 5. And it had like a significant impact on me. It was the first thing I saw that was trying to tell a story through a variety of ways. SCPs and tales, etc., etc. You know, the hub in some ways is important to the narrative as well. And rereading it for this, I don't think Hecatontries would exist without me having read this.
Yeah, I definitely see the influence there.
Like it's not in the story content, not in the tone.
Yeah.
But in the idea that like, oh, I can do whatever the fuck I want. I can tell a story that is SCPs that don't seem connected, with tales that kind of fill in the blanks but don't fully explain things, and then make somebody sit down and go, okay, this is all one piece if I consider it as one piece. I don't think I did it quite as mystifying as Callan did, but it's like it's so funny to me that like I hadn't thought about it before, and then because I read this back in like 2016, 2017, shortly after it was posted, because I wasn't a member of the site, but I was reading on the site pretty regularly, randomly on my phone, just kind of like when I had a break, and I took like a whole day off, and I just kind of read through this. It doesn't take that long to read. It's not that long. But it's funny now to realize, wow, this was like such an influence on me, and I didn't even realize it.
It gets an influence on a lot of people. Sure. I think like you see with DJ Cactus's proposals, like the Ouroboros cycle, like that came out I think around the year, or it was finished around the year after that this one did, maybe a bit longer, and you could see like the influence there of making a hub and having these interlinked sort of tales and these stories, these SCP documents, or this regular documentation that link together into a bigger piece. And I think that Kalinin being the person to sort of, I wouldn't say popularize, but be like creator in a way, or putting it on such a large stage, like especially back when this was published. When was it? You said you had notes on.
Yeah, it was November 2016.
Yeah, 2016. Like, the wiki's only a few years old at that point. And something like this in what is one of the largest slots still at the time, or the most looked at slots at the time, and putting this there, and it's such like a diversion of what you expect from an SCP document. You have a straight up tale and then a bunch of SCP documents, and then this sort of breaks that whole thing by having a mix of all of that. And it did show that you can do this for a large project, and then you could do it for a smaller project or something that's not an 001.
Right. I'm trying to look up when. What was the last TJ Cactus one? Why is it? Because the third, I'm only seeing the way it ends. That's the one it is, right?
Yeah, that's the last one. The way it ends.
It's not on the 001 page. That's interesting.
You have to go into the hub. Just look up Ouroboros.
Oh yeah, you're right. Okay.
And then it's the last one there.
Right. Let's see. When was this posted?
Yeah, 2019 it looks like. 2018.
So yeah, I mean, certainly, I think you're right. I think it probably, if not an influence in the formation of the story, but the idea that like, hey, yeah, we can do whatever the fuck we want. And they were individually posted, I believe, the Ouroboros.
Yeah, it sort of was an accident that they were kind of, or it wasn't an accident, I would say, just like very coincidental, like, hey, I can link these all together. Cactus, and it worked out pretty well.
I would argue one of them is not really that connected, but yes,
yeah.
But in general, yes, I agree, and I think they're great. I'm not gonna bash them by any means. I think they're terrific. And Rounder House is now kind of doing something similar, right? Because we had Gold Proposal and Jade Proposal, and Bone Proposal whenever that comes out. That wasn't a dig. I mean, these things take time. I mean, if that didn't happen, one of the best 001s, in my opinion, wouldn't exist, which is the J Proposal, which I know he's our friend, but like, that's not my bias. Like, he had me crit that, and I literally there was like every 100 words, I was like, God damn it, this is so good.
That's a magnum opus.
It's so fucking. I mean, I like Gold Proposal. Gold Proposal is great, and Memento Mori is great, but like J Proposal was like, fuck. There were so many parts to it. It was like, I'm actually angry that I didn't rate this anyway.
I am really excited to see what he does with Bone.
Oh yeah,
because from he'll randomly bring it up because he's realizing, hey, I have to actually write this soon, and he's been throwing ideas at the wall, and what I've been hearing is like they are complete opposites of each other, because it's like once a week I'll hear a different thing. But I'm loving it so far. I've been trying to get him to use the concept of when Pompeii was discovered, they had to pour like a mold or concrete plaster into the piles of ash to get those casts of the bodies that you see. And I really want him to use that concept because it's such a great
It's very evocative.
It's a very evocative. It's you could do so much.
And there are lots of historical artifacts that exist that are interesting and that are haunting. Having seen some of those casts on display in a museum, they're fucking haunting. That's a fucking person. That's a person who is in the middle of running away from, or collapsed on the floor, or holy shit. I mean, so if people don't know, Rounder House has done this series of it's part of a larger series, which is the red tape stuff. But Gold Proposal was sort of a redefinition of the Church of the Broken God. Jade Proposal is very obviously a redefinition of the Deva. And understand, I wrote the Deva hub. I love the Deva. It's a very important concept to me, and I think it's one of the best 001s that's ever been written, so that tells you how good of a job he did. It has nothing to do with the prior Deva lore, and it has everything to do with the prior Deva lore, and I'm so impressed by that. I believe, though, if it's not that, no one's holding him to it. I believe Bone Proposal will be sort of a redefinition of sarcasm or something like that.
It's supposed to be.
Yeah. Which is really fun. Like, I mean, we had a whole episode where we had Captain Kirby on where we were talking about how we redefine things. We would have talked about them there, but we've promised Rounder that we won't talk about Red Tape until he's on himself.
I really do love that series.
Yeah, I mean, it's all good. I don't think that I was... I don't know. Like, I was just blown away by J Proposal. Everything else that has come out connected to Red Tape has been fantastic. It's not a dig in any way. I just think J Proposal was just like on another level. It blows 6,000 out of the water. It's just, and I've been a Rounder fan for years. And this is just like, how the fuck is this like the 150th thing you've written? Like, that's incredible.
I don't often read Tales, but his Red Tape stuff, I critiqued one of the last 2 or 3 that were out. And it made me an immediate fan.
Do you know how many Tales?
I don't read them as often as I do an
Harry
SCP
and I have
article.
done. Harry's got like 115 Tales. I've got like 40.
I know.
Anyway,
I do recommend to the viewers out there listening, read any one of Rounder House's written.
Yeah,
they are very, very good.
Yeah,
and he does a good job of just building a atmosphere and also building story in a way where you don't really need to know the characters before going in. It does help, but you can read it without having that prior knowledge.
He's good at that. 6,000 was a lot like that. You don't need to know who Moose is beforehand, but if you did, you have something a little bit extra. Harry's good at that too, honestly.
Yeah, definitely. He's sort of forced to be.
Well, he's got a very long series.
Oh yeah, and just like retain a consistent reader base.
Oh yeah,
you kind of have to be able to simplify some stuff, and he's very, very good at it.
So yeah,
thanks, I appreciate it.
Oh wow, so we've mentioned it a couple times. We mentioned it last time, but my story, which also has a lot to do with the Deva, is now finished, which is Hecatontre's cycle.
I did see that, and congratulations.
Thank you. It's 85.
Big accomplishment.
85,000 words. Took 4 years. It's 20 articles.
Longer than full novel length.
Yep. Sim was recently asking me how long it was because he was like, well, how long is it? Because I want to know, if I break out the time to read it. And I told him, he's like, oh, it's not as bad as I thought. And he's like, also, wow, you wrote a novel on the wiki. And it's like, oh shit, I did.
15,000 words over the minimum right there. So there you go.
So yeah, please go read it. Because I've put a lot of effort.
Absolutely. The finale's phenomenal, and now the whole thing is readable, so now people don't have an excuse to not read it.
Yeah. Yes. God, please. Please. All right. So, Harry, we've mostly talked about Kalinins.
Oh, that's a shame.
Do you have anything you want to bring up?
No, I think you guys covered it really well.
Well, then why don't we talk about McDoctorate's proposal, which is by our friend Placeholder.
Sounds like a plan. So I guess that one's me then.
That's you to start us off, please. Yeah.
All right. Well, here's an unusual beginning. I'm going to tell you which number of his articles have been written when he wrote. This is Placeholder McDoctorate's 8th page on the SCP Wiki. This is the 6th fictional page he wrote. This is the 4th SCP he wrote. This is the 3rd solo SCP he wrote, his 001 proposal.
Yeah, it's impressive.
And I believe at the time there was a little bit of a reaction to that. There were reactions.
I will say from now that this is not one of my favorite articles. I'm gonna put that out there.
That was very nice of you to say. I feel warm inside, even though I had very little to do with this. I did crit it. I'm pretty sure I crit it. I definitely crit it.
Yeah, so this one is absolutely cool.
Well, actually, what am I saying? Like that makes me special. About 700 people crit this one. Yeah, and I know he got a lot of people who wrote previous 001s, and I don't think he agreed with most of what he read in the criticism. So he posted, and it was controversial when it came out.
Yeah.
But it's also doing some crazy shit and does it very well. And it also helps to, as opposed to the 001s that are formulating, that are capping off somebody's work, or that are like representing everything they've done before. He does it so early that it actually just kind of informs later stuff that he does, which is really rare for a 001 proposal.
Yeah, if anyone is listening and they have read or heard about Admonition, I don't think Admonition would have existed if he hadn't written this. Like, there's a lot of through lines.
Yeah, you could definitely see it.
Yeah. Anyway, Harry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, you can see that for sure. There's a lot of that in Admonition, where you can the first episode doesn't quite start off the chain of causality that leads into Admonition. There's several articles that define it. His original SCP, Integer, and then this as well, and then the Rise No Can that the two of us wrote together all coalesce into 6820, basically. But yeah, so what it actually is, having gone through all of that and talking about how you're never supposed to write a 001 this early, and it was considered to be very bizarre that he did. And it threw a lot of people, because the style of writing that he has popularized was not really a thing that was being done on the wiki at the time.
I remember
by some previous authors
really annoyed about it, because I don't think he had quite, and I know he had not found his audience quite yet. Even though he should have been, because I always love this.
It's got like it's not that nobody had ever written like this before. The Billith was here a long time ago, and he's got his style, and Jack Ike as well, and Hammer Maiden, and there's lots of people who write like really heady stuff. But it wasn't the metagame for sure. It wasn't the norm, and it was a big shock. And I remember reading it being like, holy shit, this is weird. And trying to read each sentence to determine exactly what was going on. What it is at its core is a commentary on the fact that we think the 001 slot is super fucking important. And there's a fairly flat two-dimensional comparison to be made with Kate McTierce's proposal, which basically goes, because the 001 slot is super important, I'm able to use it to turn myself into a god. And that is effectively what happens in this story, but it does it in a very different way, because this is commenting on the perceived importance of the 001 proposal, and how it blows the importance of the article deeply out of proportion when you put an article in there, which I think also pissed off a lot of people who have 001 proposals. But essentially what happens is they discover the existence of an intensifying anomaly. The 001 slot is not actually originally the way we see it today, full of all these world-ending, inconsistent with each other anomalies. It's a place where when a staff member retires, they put a little bit of a blurb about a minor anomaly that like mattered to them, maybe the first one that they did, the first one they worked with, or one that really, typifies their career, and they just put a little bit in there, and it's called the Heritage Collection, and everybody's got a little entry, and that's really nice. And then because of this horrific, intensifying, anomalous effect, they all become like massive world-ending catastrophe things like they are in the 001 slot. And so what the Foundation does, and it is a little hard to keep track of it because it's written precisely and correctly in a way that you have to be following along to really get it. As the Foundation tries to edit the document, as they begin to realize it's having this effect, every edit they do inadvertently makes the effect more powerful until they until they essentially turn the head of the Records and Information Security Administration, Maria Jones, into a goddess, and also destroy human language in a very, very problematic way, because they keep editing the file, and then the effect keeps intensifying and intensifying until it's basically like blown so far out of proportion that things have gotten seriously unreal, which makes this his first, well, it's not his first article was his first format screw, but this one's a big fucking format screw. There is a point in this article where the number 1 and the letter A cannot appear, because they've been, because they're the firsts, and first has been gotten rid of as a way of responding to this anomaly. And it all cycles back until you realize that you actually started the story at the end of the story after the problem had been resolved. So it's a cyclical piece. It uses list pages to cycle through this journey of one woman in charge of a records administration, using her records administration powers to save the world from a gigantic world-altering threat that happened because of the records.
Yeah, and the process by which we get there is really interesting because it starts off with Maria Jones, who's the director of Ryza. A lot of different articles. This is not just placeholders thing. Rounder's got a whole series of Maria Jones stories, and people use her all the time, though typically it's just a note in the beginning from Maria Jones. Starts off with her investigating and kind of saying things like, listen, 001 is supposed to be just maintained as a placeholder designation. Before this, we were only ever storing these retirement proposals in there. The anomalies were documented, were to be referred to by the code names, the surname of the employee responsible for each proposal, and personnel possessing lower than level 5 clearance are to be informed the designation is kept vacant for administrative or technical reasons. And then, because the 001 is the first in the database, and because of what she's discovered that is believed to amplify certain aspects of the anomalies, these retirement proposals are, like you said, turning into these end of the world things. These things that were just supposed to be personal pieces of research are these things that are now, so huge they couldn't possibly all exist. And they exhibit a dramatic, less technical nature, written in a more narratively appealing tone than would be expected from a standard research proposal, and the identification of these common characteristics led to the discovery of 001's theorized effect. But the thing is that the 001 slot has existed since 1970 and was apparently uploaded by Maria Jones, but she didn't work there then, or if she did, no, she did work there, but she wasn't actually present on site on the day it was uploaded, but it supposedly was uploaded by her, and it was supposedly approved by the O5 Council, but there are no records associated with that, and there's no way of identifying who the author is.
Right.
And there's this one line that's really quite interesting, that it's the possibility of a result from CK class reality restructuring events.
Right.
Which is this really fun way of directly addressing the fact that all these articles are pretty inconsistent. Some of them could exist in the same universe, but many of them are presented as, this is the end-all be-all origin of the Foundation, this is the end-all be-all end of the world, or whatever. And instead of saying, there is no canon, this article says, well, actually, what if they all existed? And each time reality was restructured in some way. And maybe that led to the 001 becoming what it is, maybe not. It seems to be a side effect. But it certainly affects two things, or possibly both things. The Site-01 internal database and the memories of the Site-01 personnel, and all other Foundation databases or memories of other Foundation personnel. Because in this second offset, we discover that there's a 001-A, and there's no evidence of this existing outside of the document. No personnel at Site-01 claim any knowledge of -A. And then you find out -A is Maria Jones. So we started off from the first offset, or actually not the first offset, but the first next page, which it said that the 4 documents have uploaded to 001, is Maria Jones doing the actual investigation, to somehow through this process of doing the investigation and their attempts to do something about it, Maria Jones has been erased. She's still around because she's still editing the document. And they're even recording. They find out that her identification is tied to one single landline that they bug and record an incoming call, which is her, even though it's unknown voice or whatever, talking about how actually I don't understand. They don't know that I'm real, and they've forgotten it. But it's really important that you don't think about the 001. Don't consider it. Don't research it. It doesn't matter. Because it's devouring me and it's going to devour everything else.
The line with the devouring is one of my favorite lines he's written.
Good. Yeah.
bring it up here. I think it's on page 2.
I think it's devouring me.
Yeah, the unidentified voice size. I think it's devouring me now.
And the Foundation, in response to this, goes, we're pretty sure this was manufactured by SCP-001 in order to prevent its containment, so we shouldn't take this seriously.
Right.
Because in this universe, in this reality, there is no director of RISA. That's always been taken care of by 05-1. 05-1 is the one that handles the RISA sort of high-level duties. And there's a note even for them saying, listen, there's no signs of any memory insertion or alterations. So if this is a reality restructuring anomaly, it's so complete, it's undetectable. And then you get to the third offset, and it's, they're gods.
Yes, it gets real fast.
The Foundation is is like a religious organization now that is all in service of the primordial form and the archival form, which are two aspects of competing deific experience, which is pretty sure, one of them is 001 and one of them is Maria Jones.
Just Maria.
Yeah.
And
this consistent, tug of war to try and do the, and her continuing to try and edit the file is having worse and worse effects.
We just talk about like how ballsy it is for this to be a 4th article.
Oh,
Gary
so
kind of hit on
fucking-
that, but my god.
It's so fucking huge. Like his previous articles are, this guy accidentally poked a god and stole his name and gave him a dumb name that he can't not have anymore. And stuff written for the Canon Renaissance contest and the AIAD thing,
I love that series.
which is all really good stuff. But that's like it. That was his career. He wrote Integer. Then the next thing he did was the theme for AIAD, like the CSS theme. Then he did a tale, and then he did an article, and then he did another SCP that was with somebody else, with Tiamat, I believe, and then another tale, and it was all the AIAD stuff, and then this. So really, outside of the team contest, he did one article and then a 001.
Yeah. And
it's this one.
And it's already like kind of holy shit, I can't believe what's happening by the third offset. But by the fourth offset, it's just like slap you in the face.
Yes.
Because it's a completely different color scheme that we never used to see. I would argue we see it a little too often now. But
the dark mode, yeah.
The dark mode with the red lettering and whatever. And also, like you said, the number 1 and the letter A are missing, so that's really fucking with your ability to read it. But of course, if you guys go look at it, you can just highlight everything and everything shows up.
That's right. It's very nice.
And it's like, this is where I was like, oh my God. It's so funny because I had never read it since I crit it. And at the time I liked it. I was like, this is ballsy as fuck. And I was like, I can't believe you're doing this. What is this? What number article is this? You are probably going to get a lot of hate for this. Because it's a big challenge to the status quo. But my thing that I really love about it is, while it is, I think, directly critiquing the degree by which this community holds up the 001 proposals and the prestige associated with it, and that everyone feels like it's such an important thing. And then in some ways, there's so many of them now, how important could they really be? But it's done with in such a loving way.
Yeah. It's not mocking it at all.
Yeah, right. I think that there's a significant issue with this practice this community does, but also I think it's awesome. I think that's really my takeaway here. So when people got when people were kind of not happy with this because it's saying that, maybe your 001 isn't that important. Sure, it is kind of saying that, but it's not saying, you shouldn't have fucking done it, because obviously he's doing it. And look at the effort that was put into it.
I mean, the proof in that is the fact that it also makes very explicit reference to those, because attached to it is a collaborative log, which is those heritage proposals that are mentioned, which are 001 proposals scaled down to what would it be like if what you saw on the site was an anomalously inflated version of this. So, for example, Quantum's fucking key and lock is an egg timer. And Swan's piece of paper that you flipped. Swans? No, not Swans. Swan's Jonathan Balls. Swan's article, which is everything is which is the pataphysics, and it's a database, and horror writers outside our universe are creating our universe. This is just the SCP database, and it's arranged pataphysically to be more interesting to read, so that people actually read it. So it's a scaled down version of each of those, and you can contribute to it. It hasn't been contributed to fairly recently, but it has a fairly hefty proportion of the 001s in it. Not mine though.
Yeah, and I mean, we were saying before that Callan's is pretty controversial in a lot of ways, and this
is probably the most controversial.
Yeah, and Callan's, which is older than Tufto's, for example, Tufto's is over 1,000, rightfully so. Callan's hasn't even hit 400, which understandable. It's a lot. McDoctorate's is like 240, 238. 232.
232 right now.
Which I think is criminal. I think it's a lot higher.
Like 3 years ago? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Almost exactly 3 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, especially in a world in which 6820 is like one of the more popular articles to come out in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Why have more people not gone back and read this? Because if you like 6820, you'll fucking like this.
We'll say that 6820 feels like what this one would have been in a way.
Oh yeah.
Like you could definitely like my reasons for not liking it as much as I do other articles is based on just like it's a little high concept for my liking. Just that's personal preference, but also like it's a little finding like you're still finding the ropes a little bit. Yeah. And I do applaud the ballsiness of writing an 001 article, a 001 piece as within your first 5 things, and I think that is something commendable. But 6820 or any of the admonition stuff is much more put together. You could see the clear authorial vision, whereas this has a few issues. Like it does feel like to me it does feel a little bit disjointed, and I as something you can look at to be like, oh, this is where it started. I could see where these concepts grew. And something I would like to see at some point is, I don't know if I would like a rewrite, but some sort of like expansion or reimagining, because Placeholder would be the type of person where he can make a very, very long article where he takes these concepts in a very interesting way and turns it into something grand or grander than it already is. And I really do hope he does that.
Yeah, that would be pretty sensible. He has done that a few times. I mean, that is what 6820 is, and actually that's what all of Admonition is doing that. The Rise No Canon that we wrote together was him and I basically rewriting The Breach That Keeps On Breaching. And hey, maybe someday we'll do an even crazier rewrite of both.
Maybe.
I want to read just one section of Offset 4, which is the one where all primacy has been erased, and just because it's really funny, it makes them sound like P. Hudson Gawk from Totley Soft. It's just really funny to read like this. Addendums blue, separations events red, information from overseers councils, because every A is now EI. Separations events red have occurred. We have traded these before chaoses for new chaoses. It makes them sound Canadian. These foundations will order these chaoses. Humanities will continue. Us we always have. We are a part in these darknesses, so as yous may be together in these lights. Displays errors. It's just fucking funny to read. Because everything that would normally be singular is also now plural, because if it's singular, if it's a single thing, then it's got primacy. So it's had that removed from it as well. So we don't live in the dark so that we don't die in the dark so you can live in the light. We are apart in these darknesses so you may be together in these lights. And this is one thing he's better at than pretty much anybody. And definitely this is shit I can't do, is he can think through a really lunatic premise that will make it very difficult to write something, and then he can write it.
Yeah, he commits to the bit.
And he does that in like so many things where he goes, 682 has been erased from reality. What would an article look like if it had been erased from reality, and how would you write that? And then he did. He's got a piece coming out fairly soon where he does that in equally crazy measure. He's very good at high concept wackiness in a way that I don't think I would ever be able to compete with.
Yeah.
Everybody's got a niche.
Yeah, and I agree with Plague that I think that this is the evolving form. Like that's why I said that, like, you by reading this you can see where admonition came from. Not that there's a one-to-one sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I get the critique that it feels a little disjointed. But I think that this is just, and maybe it's just me because I really, really enjoy this kind of writing, and sometimes I even try to do it, though I don't always. Where you're telling a lot of the story, off the page. Like there's a lot of but it's not even between the lines, because there's a sense that you have to be trying to catch up with what could have happened in between the reality restructurings, and and it doesn't matter if there's an exact answer that you've come up with. Sometimes it's just a feeling. But because I think the reason this works for me is the same reason that I like Lynch so much, is that this is not written like Lynch would write something, but this is trying to just evoke, a certain state of mind when you get to each new instance. And
there is a legitimate amount of puzzling it out that's required.
Yeah. And it's like, and I'm sure, and I'm sure he's talked about it, and I'm sure you could sit down and he would talk for 30 minutes about what is actually happening in each one. But I like so much that this never stops to say, here's what happened. Although the last one does, and I think it has to, because it's kind of the payoff in a lot of ways.
What's kind of funny is you're introduced to the payoff before you know it's the payoff.
Yeah.
The thing I really like about it is this proposal that is pushed onto them is this, we've mentioned a couple times, the concept of primacy. Primacy being something being the first and or the best of any set of ordered things. So the first letter in an alphabet, the first number in a list of numbers, the first word that is considered, whatever. And my favorite part is when they're like, listen, the way that we're going to solve this is we're going to eradicate a concept of primacy from the human conception, like take it out of the noosphere. It's going to cease being an issue. These people are not trying to write something in such a way to avoid using the word A or the number 1. They don't have that concept.
It's gone.
It's gone. My favorite part about it is within this thing, it says the process's potential detriment to humanity is unknown. Any prime associated concepts, including unity, individuality, etc., are likely to be removed from the noosphere. Let's do it anyway. Which is my favorite. It's just like, okay, this is all the lead up to why we shouldn't do this. And then,
just when you phrase it that way, that does really, really lead into the way admonition works.
Yeah,
because they do that every time.
Is 100%. Here we have this problem, and it's maybe not a huge problem. Like, we have 682 basically under control, but we really want to solve this problem. Let's do something fucking insane and almost destroy the universe to get
absolute
rid of it.
Worst solution possible.
Like, it's just.
Admonitions, or even this one, is the foundation of fucking around and finding out.
Yeah.
Finding out real big time,
And it's always the thing that, like, GW talked about the first time he was on, where let's go to the logical, like, ending of this idea. And Placeholder does that so well, does it really well here, where it's like, okay, so the 001's weird, right? We all know that it's weird. Here's how we think we could deal with that problem. And then just kind of keep going down this, like, logical fucking fallacy roller coaster until you get to the point where, like, the human race no longer has the concept of the number 1 or the letter A. Like, it's just, what the fuck?
And it's also a thing that he likes to do. It happens in the Rise Now canon as well, where the page starts out on a nice, clean, white screen page where it's nice, and then suddenly shit gets real and the page turns red.
Yeah, but I mean, like, as much as the 4th offset, the 4th document is visually stunning, and I don't mean stunning like it's beautiful, although I do like the look of it. It's just kind of, like I said, a slap to the face. But really, in conceptual, the third offset was already doing that because we
Oh,
went from Riser director Maria Jones is investigating this weird thing, and we're gonna see what happens. And then Riser director Maria Jones never existed, and no one has any idea who the fuck you're talking about. But she does exist, and she's still able to leave voicemails. To if you read between the lines, Maria Jones is not only still around, she's a god, but not because she wanted to be, because 001 has gotten so out of control and she has gotten so intertwined with the concept of 001 that she's now just kind of being taken along for the ride.
And she's just trying to find a way to fix it in her own archival way. There should be some friggin' Tumblr shipping art with Mary Nakayama from Material's Proposal and Maria Jones.
Yeah. The way I describe this and Admonition is the Foundation discovers a relatively minor problem, a problem that they are seemingly handling it, and decides to correct it with a grenade. Like, every time it's just like, what if we subtract this from the noosphere? No, don't do that.
Okay. I don't like what I'm seeing, so what if I punch myself in the eye?
Yeah, like on a metaphysical level.
Right.
Which it's funny because I had never attempted to write anything like this, and the end of Hecatontries is my first attempt to like seriously write something like this. Although it doesn't go all the way because there's a lot of narrative stuff in there as well. But the actual
I was very surprised when I saw that. When I saw the anomaly that you wrote in it, and it ties in super well, and it was like, wow, you're going all out for the ending here.
Well, it was the idea, and I'm not going to spoil it because people just got to read my series.
Read it.
There's a thing I introduced in the second article that is continuing to be the B plot throughout the series of articles. It's not the main problem. It's not the conflict that is pushing forward the plot, but it is consistently brought up and is affecting one of the main characters in a significant way, and through her is affecting the events of the main plot. And I was like, I am not walking away from this series without paying this off.
You gotta have that gunfire eventually.
Right.
You did very satisfyingly.
And I was like, but this thing that I have been saying, I knew what it was in my head the whole time. I never openly said what it was. It was just sort of this mindless, bodiless thing that had a voice in another reality. But I had always decided, I always knew what it was. But because of what I had said what it was in my head and through what I'd implied, I was like, oh, this can't be about somebody going into an abandoned warehouse full of weird shit. Like, that is not the way that this problem is dealt with. There is an exploration log, but it's like just sort of there to like help explain what the results are.
Right.
It's weird noosphere stuff, because it has to be. I have the phrase "famous occulta" in there.
Right. Well, this is the beauty. The beauty of it is we come with our own talents and ideas, and then the talents and ideas of others rub off on us and makes us all better. So
I was literally going through all of Place's articles and all of Admonition to be like, how does one write anything like this? Like, I wasn't trying to copy it, but it was just
no, I get you.
I don't write things like this.
It's not the usual style. Yeah.
I don't write high concept anomalies that are affecting all of human existence, but I need to do that here because that's what I've set up, and I don't feel like it would pay off otherwise.
Right.
Place, if you're listening to this episode, thank you. You really inspired me with this one and Admo. And obviously, Admonition is also with Liren and many other authors, so it's not just Placeholder. But
yeah, and hey, if you like Placeholder's writing, or if you like my writing, we've both got some articles coming out sometime within the period of the 20s in November. So just watch out for that. Don't go into detail. Just no big deal. Anyway.
Okay, so we have any last thoughts about 001s in general? About any of these three?
What do you think, Thog?
I think these are all very strong pieces. I recommend that everybody out there reads, if not all of them, check out one of them. Of course, I recommend Tough Toes. Yeah, I think what all of these show, and if you check out the other episode as well, where we go over some shorter ones, I think it really does show that the SCP Wiki format, as well as something that's looked at as one of the most important benchmarks of the SCP Wiki itself, is very malleable.
Mm-hmm.
You can do a lot with the format, you can do a little with the format. It all depends on what you want to write and the story you want to tell. So if you're looking to write, or if you're having some writer's block, keep on reading and keep on seeing what other people do, because that is the best way
For
to
sure.
get ideas and show your own player as well.
Absolutely.
An interesting, it's a tangent, but it's related. If you think that an SCP or anything on the wiki should be blank, that there should only be this kind of article.
Should be by me.
If you think that there is a concrete boundary as to what can or cannot be on the SCP wiki, or should not be, or even if you just have that faith, not like you're some gung-ho, have a soapbox to stand on, but just kind of think, this doesn't feel. I want to point out that years ago, and still, so much of the comic book industry in America, anyway, not in Europe or Japan, in America is dominated by superheroes. Such a huge amount. Even the independent stuff, even stuff by Image and Dark Horse, etc. It's not just Marvel and DC. So much of the monthly books that are brought out and remembered are people putting on costumes to fight crime in stupid ways. I love superheroes, but it's all stupid. Years and years ago, 40 years ago, a guy named Harvey Pekar started writing stories about his everyday life and hiring artists to come in and illustrate it because he couldn't draw worth shit. And he drew little stick figures in breaking out what the images should be, and then he trusted the artists to write it up. And he was a guy who worked in a medical records department in a hospital and was obsessed with writing academic papers on history. And when asked why he wrote stories about his everyday life, shit like him going to get a piece of pie or having an argument with his wife or whatever, he said comic books are just words and pictures. You can tell any story with words and pictures. And that's what the SCP Wiki is. Anything can be told here. Anything. And it has been, and it will be. And if you think something like 6500 doesn't fit, or if you think blank doesn't fit, you're wrong. If it's surviving and it's found an audience, that's great. And that's also to say that if you have an idea that you think, won't work because it's a little bit too much outside the box, all three of these examples should be a big wake-up call that, like Plague said, it's fucking malleable as hell. You could do almost anything in there as long as you try to fit the ideas of the clinical language. You can force feed your way into all different ways of narratives that can work really well.
Absolutely. Our boy over here got a 001 that's composed largely of things that were deleted.
Yeah, which is awesome.
You can make literally anything work, even things that haven't worked you can make work if you... Absolutely true.
I love that so fucking much.
It's so great.
Maybe someday I'll actually have an 001 idea. Probably not, though.
Maybe someday.
Oh, that's a change from the last time we heard about his.
Well, now I've done
his
one,
desire for an
so
Yeah.
it's stupid, but it also was it was a joint thing, and it's all a joke. But I don't know. I mean,
whenever Grigori goes absolutely not, there is an unspoken until.
Except for, we will never absolutely talk about a lot of GOIs.
No, God no.
But yeah, well, I think the reason that I'll just say that the reason I was holding back, the reason I felt like I never could, is because any big idea that I had that wasn't connected to Hecatontries or Victim or whatever just didn't make sense. And I feel a little bit free having finished Hecatontries. And I have a really big idea I'm working on right now, although it will not be on the SCP Wiki. And it just feels like a burden has been lifted.
Yep, getting a series done is not unlike taking a great big dump and then having a shower. Got all that shit out of there, and I feel squeaky clean and ready to do something new.
All right. So
that's my non-poetic way of following up Grigori's poetic explanation of how writing is beautiful.
It's a valid way of describing finishing something, certainly.
I guess I could have gone with pregnancy, but I don't really have much experience with that.
That's fine. Anyway, all right. So we had actually gotten 2 emails. Because I didn't bother to send you guys an outline this time.
No fucking outline this time because we had 3 articles.
It just seems silly. I'll just read the emails, but then please feel free to respond. All right. First email is from Real Surreal Sir.
Surreal Sir.
Hey, glad to hear Plague will be back on. Always love his humor and commentary.
Yeah.
Anyway, my question this time for whoever among y'all wants to give their takes. Real Surreal Sir, you gotta start structuring the sentences better. Anyway, what some of the least conventional 001 proposals that you still really like, whether in spite of or even because of how it differs or subverts the tropes? Rounder's red tape series of 001s don't count too easy. Hot take, I don't think they do subvert the tropes. That's not the point of them.
No, they're not subversive. That's not the main thing. They subvert lore, but they're not subversive in format. Right. Well, they are. They're not subversive now in format because
they would have been
storytelling.
In 2012.
It's execution and quality of world building and scope that's what makes those special, and it makes them very special.
Also, because it's all about redefining lore, and yet somehow is like incredibly readable. So, like, that's hard to do, guys. Exposition is hard, and when you make it interesting, you've done a good job.
To get the same feeling where you're watching a movie and it's happening and you're just into it. To have that work with writing is a very seriously cool skill to have. Yeah. So does the email continue, or are we on that question?
No, that's the question.
Scantrons. I like Scantrons. It's fucking weird. It's the one where the Foundation is an alien entity that appears in a barn, in a gym one day and just starts gibbering about containment. Like the Foundation is just extruded into reality, wanting to contain and hire scientists.
It's a UIU document, right? Oh god, yeah, that one's so good.
Yeah, completely unheadcanonable, but it's really entertaining, and I like it. They're just like the Foundation is this eldritch thing that just shows up in a school gymnasium and starts trying to make the SCP Foundation and starts like creating G-men and scientists and going out and grabbing stuff, and the UIU is sitting there going, what the fuck is that? Really like that one.
It's incredible.
Unusable for basically anything at all, but it's a really good one.
That's most of the 001s though.
Yeah, most of them are.
Kind of hard to build off of, except for maybe on another, like Rounder can build off of Gold proposal to make J proposal, but like it's hard to like say, oh, I'm going to use Memento Mori to tell a story. Like, no.
Right. It's true. It already has told a story. Yeah. Well, what would you say is an unusual one or a non-conventional one?
Looking through the lister. I mean, we went over Kalinins and places, which are both pretty solid. I would say, not to my own horn, me and Davey Fools
Last Ride of the Day, for fuck's sake.
are the only really funny ones, or the ones that are actively going for humor.
Hey, Davey Fools got 2 of them now.
Well, 2 of them, yeah. Let me see.
The human.
What's that one, Fish Hook?
Yes.
Oh, the Fish Hook.
Fish Hook is...
Pretty antique.
Yeah. Pretty antique. I would say Nico's proposal is a really good recent one that's very unusual. It's the tail.
Nico's is very unusual because Nico's goes right back to basics. It's like a short tail that makes like primal point.
I really like... I mean, other than the ones we talked about today, I think both Kalinins and placeholders are really good answers to this situation, to this question. But if we're not going to pick one of those, something recent, I think Nagiros's recent Rage is fucking incredible and really underrated, and it very much breaks the mold right from the first page.
Yeah, it's completely crazy to the point where I still don't really know what's going on, and I don't fucking care. David Lynch again.
It's very Deep Well, Site 17, which is something Nagiros has done for a long time and really, really well. she's just very, very. I've always been a huge fan of Big Heroes. And I'm probably saying her name wrong, but I think that one is one to really look at.
That's a very good one to pick up.
It breaks the mold entirely.
I would also say I always like Pickman's Story of Your Life, which is just a tale. Just straight up, doesn't even pretend. It's the process of writing a 001.
Well, okay, we got another email, which is from Dino Draws. Dear Simply Creative People, howdy hi. This is my first time sending an email, but I've been scampering about and listening to episodes as listening to make my procrastination brain write SCP stuff after I initially found y'all via the Nobody episode. That was a hard sentence to read. There's one main thing I'm curious about in terms of today's episode, and if this is a really loaded question, I do apologize, but how does one go about conceptualizing an 001 proposal? What makes an 001 an 001 opposed to a normal SCP? Is it some massive affecting thing? TM? Something large and lore establishing? I've read a few and want to know what you guys think. I hope you have a great Thanksgiving. Eat good food, drink good drinks.
Yeah, I did have a good Thanksgiving in October.
Oh yeah, I don't know. We kind of hit on this earlier in the episode and also in the last one. But on the conceptualizing point, that's one of the hardest things to answer, I'd say. Harry, if you agree with me there, let me know. I think you kind of just get a feeling.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. That was the answer I was gonna
see it.
You're out there and you go, "Oh, this is a 001."
I could when I first got my 001 idea, I was sort of just going through my older stuff. I wanted to rewrite them and post them back to the site. And then at the same time, I was working on rewriting 7001. And that one is about Light 19 being the manifestation of the Foundation's containment. Right. It's just like a concept brought into the real world. So just that idea compounded with working on an older deleted article of mine, kind of just combined in my head, and I was like, what would be the in-universe explanation for why this thing doesn't exist? Because for a period of time, for about a year and a half, my first article was on the site and was being contained in universe, then randomly it disappeared and never to be spoken of again. What happened? So I started out with trying to figure out an idea for that, and then at that point, when the anomaly sort of formed and I had the general structure I wanted to go for, I was like, yeah, this could be my 001. So it's sort of like that lightning bolt moment that I've talked about a few times on here, where you get an idea and you write it and you look at it and you're like, I could do, or you just think about it, not even writing it, you're like, I can make this my, let's say it's 8,000 contests, this could be my 8,000 contest entry. This could be my 001. This is just a main slot article. Once you get into the nitty-gritty of writing for the wiki, you'll kind of get those feelings of knowing, hey, this is going to be a special one. And there will be certain ways you approach it that'll be much differently, and certain ways that you approach it that'll be the exact same to how you'll write a normal article.
Yeah, that was exactly what happened. That was actually the answer I was going to give. It's that, when Ip and I were writing it, we got to a certain point and we'd established a certain amount of backstory, and we had characters coming in, and it was using stuff from his canon. It was using a lot of stuff from my canon. We had a lot of historical stuff. We were doing a lot of Foundation world building. We were explaining an element of the site, and I was doing an absolute ton of extremely high effort photoshops for it. And after a certain point, I'm looking at it and I'm going, this is a 001. And I didn't want to say it to him because he already had a few, and I was worried that he'd say no. So I was sitting there staring at it And eventually he started trying to pick a number. And he's like, well, how about this number? How about this number? And I went, yeah, how about this number? how about 001? And he went, oh, yeah, actually, yeah, I could do that, yeah. It just after a while, we realized that was what it was.
Yeah, I think that's why I say, I have said before,
it's what we say it is.
Can't see myself doing it because of the idea.
You haven't had that yet.
Yeah. I mean, I've had lots of big ideas, but they were all within a framework of something, everything so far that has been really big ideas that I've had have been applying to a continuing narrative or something else. And most of the time when I have those kind of lightning bolt moments, They are very, because this is the way that I write, very like small stories with maybe emotional like resonance. Even though I'll write about big, end of the world stuff as well, like that's never the point that I'm discussing. So I've always kind of felt like if an idea occurs to me that I think is too big to fit into an SCP or needs to be an 001, then I'll write it. But so far I've never had that idea. Except for in the period where I was like, I don't know, maybe if we don't win, we should turn 6500 into an 001.
6500, yeah, for sure, because it's a world-altering threat, which is how Dark Stuff defines 001s as they're like the number one priority right now.
But in reality, so many of them I don't think fit that. So yeah,
No, they don't.
Like Plague was just saying
personal.
before we got into the emails, these are so malleable.
Oh yeah.
If you genuinely look at something that is an 001 and say, I don't know if this feels like an 001, you're wrong. Is it succeeding? That's all that matters.
Did everybody else, did we collectively decide it probably is one? Then fucking deal with it.
If the author decided to post it as an 001 and it's doing well enough to succeed, it is one. Maybe you don't like it as much. And there are plenty of these that I don't like that are very popular.
Oh, yeah.
And this is not on Dino Draws. This is just a general thing. But like Plague and Harry were just saying, I think it just occurs to the writer at the time of conceptualizing. I doubt anyone steps out.
Yeah.
It's why I say I maybe won't do one, because I can't imagine sitting down and going, okay, now I need to think of an idea that is an 001. I think that will not work.
Right, like when I wrote my third article, there is an occurrence in it that refers to a thing that while I was writing that article, I went, that thing's a 001, and it still will be. It comes out at the end of the next book as a 001, because I've had this thing that was so definitely my canon's main 001 that it's been that way since the third article. Yeah. And eventually, articles just start referring to the characters as 001, even though the article hasn't been written yet, because they will be eventually.
I remember the first time you did that, and I was like, wait, which 001 are you talking about? And you're like,
none of them.
Don't, if I get there, then you'll find out.
It kind of bothered me. It very slightly bothered me when I got placeholders draft for his 001, and he had it in one of the iterations. It's classed Highmall, which is two anomalies containing each other. I'm like, damn it, I was going to have the first Highmall 001. You know what else it's the first 001? I'm pretty sure the way it ends adds ACS later on. I think placeholders proposal was the first 001 to use the ACS at the top of the page. I'm almost 100% sure it was. Nobody else had the guts, because there was, when we started writing, you could get frequently downvoted for using ACS at the top of your page. So I'm pretty sure McDottrid's proposal was the first 001 to use it, including Cactus, for whom ACS was created. Which is pretty crazy.
Also,
because you just don't give a shit. I'll post whatever I want.
Because they don't like formatting? That sucks. Unless it's literally hard to read.
Like if it's really ugly, bad, hideous formatting,
like
okay, but not. But
it's like an orange page with neon purple text. Like, okay. But even then, like, are you downvoting or are you just leaving a comment saying, hey, this looks hard to read? Hey, let's talk about the fact that when you downvote something, what you're saying is you want it to be off the wiki.
Right.
You're not just saying, I don't like this. You're saying, I think, personally, this should not be on the page. This should not be housed on the SCP wiki. So maybe think about that when you downvote.
Anyway, they've definitely lost that fight with ACS.
I mean, like all the things that slowly changed, like the way that like narrative is such an important part of SCPs now. Like it just kind of kept on going because that's what people wanted to do, and people could complain about it. But eventually, they just stopped having the energy to complain about it because it just kept happening.
Things change. Things change. Lots of things have changed. I mean, you used to get disciplinary procedures for upvoting your own articles. For fuck's sake.
Good God, are you serious?
Yep. As the wise man said, the past is a foreign country. They do things differently there.
I'm trying to see if I have anything that's ACS. No. Hey, Plague, did we use ACS on 5486?
Yeah, I think we did. I might have changed it.
No. Well, maybe. Oh no, I guess this is ACS. Yeah, it's just a very.
And I've used it on almost every SCP I have.
I don't have any problem with it. I just don't like it so much because it doesn't.
It matches the style of what I do, so I mean, doesn't
Oh
matter
yeah,
the
I'm
style
not
what everybody
saying.
does.
Yeah, I'm not.
Everybody's got their own headers. You've got that one.
Well, I use an altered version. I use an altered version where I just show the object class, because after writing, how many articles have I written? Like probably like 39 SCPs at this point.
Tired of risk classes.
I got tired. Like even now, I got tired of like 3 years on the site having to go and check. Hey, is this the right one? I just got rid of that, so it just shows the object class.
Yeah.
Bro, I got like 50-something SCPs, and I do not lie. I go to Chrome and I look up ACS guide every single time to decide if it's risking. There's no amount that will keep those 10 options correctly hierarchized in my own head. Yeah.
And that's why I don't use it. It's not because I think it's bad. It's because I don't want to cause. I don't want the reader to have to go look something up the moment they open it up if they care about it.
Yeah, I say it with a deep and abiding sense of love for everyone who takes the time to read anything I've written. If you have a comment about my object or class or my object class or risk class or disruption class, I strongly, just lovingly invite you to share that with yourself and anyone else who cares, because it's not me.
Yeah, crit that is perfectly subjective. This didn't land for me, or
don't do that one.
I don't think this is the right class, or I don't think this is the right risk class, or whatever. That's not helpful to anyone. It's not constructive. It doesn't do anything for you. It doesn't do anything for any other reader. It's just you saying, I wanted my opinion to be heard.
If you can, that's not to say don't leave, if something doesn't land for you, don't not leave a comment, but give actual, examples.
Think about why it didn't work.
Why didn't this work for
why?
you?
And you know what? Constructive criticism is not just not being mean. What would have made it land for you?
It's helping to construct. It's thinking of something that will allow the author to improve the work.
And let me tell you, just this tiny little thing, when you start to suggest in your crit or in commentary with another author, I think you should have done it this way. Almost certainly that author is thinking, why don't you go write that article? Because I wrote this one. I always find that I don't get annoyed by that crit, but I just always think it's funny when people are like, basically you're proposing a completely different article. Which is fine, but that's not. I'm not going to rewrite the entire core premise. That's unless it somehow I'm just blind to the fact that this doesn't work at all. This is just a subjective you thing. It's not what you expected, so you wanted something else, which is again also not constructive. Anyway, let's see. Yeah, I think that's about it. So why don't
nothing else left to bitch about?
Yeah, I know.
For now.
Hey, it's my show. We can do it.
We'll probably. It's our party, and we can whine if we want to.
That's
we can probably bet that at some point we'll have another 001 episode.
Probably.
I will be back.
Yeah, but
PGFA will return in
something. I'm always gonna want you back. I like hanging out with you. So
you cool dude.
All right, so our emails, if you want to send in emails, and they do not have to be on the specific subject of the show. You can send in a general email with questions, or just here's a cool thing I thought, and we will read it as long as it's not offensive. The email address is simplycreativepeople@gmail.com. The Twitter for the show is @SIMCREAT. My Twitter is Grigori Karpin.
@HarryBlank SCP.
And play them on platforms.
Yeah,
Plague PJP.
And also, if you don't like Twitter, which is perfectly fair, on everything else, I'm also @Grigori Karpin. So Instagram and Tumblr and blah 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 blah. Yeah. So Harry, tell us a funny joke to end the episode.